The Keltier system was a graveyard of forgotten wars. Its planets were scarred by battles fought long before humanity ever left Earth's atmosphere. Ancient wreckage drifted in its asteroid belts. Derelict stations loomed like broken monuments, and its surface bore the scars of long-dead empires. It was a place where only the desperate ventured, hoping to scavenge relics of power before the ruling forces of the galaxy swept in to claim them. Captain Elias Voss had seen the way humanity was treated beyond Sol. To the greater galactic powers they were insignificant, clever, yes, resourceful even, but ultimately weak. They were tolerated as merchants, dismissed as soldiers, and disregarded as explorers. Earth's influence extended only as far as the nearest trade lanes, and the only reason they weren't enslaved or exterminated was the fragile balance of politics keeping the larger empires from simply erasing them. But here, in the ruins of Keltier Prime, something ancient stirred beneath the dust. The salvage team had spent weeks excavating a buried ruin, its entrance hidden beneath layers of ash and rock, obscured by time itself. Initial scans had detected anomalous readings, something enormous, something powerful. But every attempt to drill deeper had been met with resistance. The deeper they went, the stranger the readings became, until finally, after detonating a charge to clear a collapsed corridor, they found it. The chamber stretched beyond sight, its walls lined with inscriptions in a language no one could decipher. A single massive structure stood at its center, dark metal, seamless and unbroken, taller than a warship, and humming with something just below the range of human hearing. The air was thick with tension, as if the very space around them recognized that something had changed. The Warborn Titan. It was the largest construct any of them had ever seen, humanoid in shape but utterly alien in design. Its armor was a matte black alloy, untouched by time, with strange veins of energy pulsing beneath its surface. Its head, sleek and featureless, bore no sign of eyes, yet it felt like it was watching them. Its arms, ending in massive gauntlets, looked as though they could crush battlecruisers like paper. And yet it did not move. A dead relic, perhaps, a forgotten weapon left to rust beneath the ruins of a civilization long since lost to history. But then Voss stepped forward. The moment his hand brushed against its surface, the world changed. Pulse surged through the air, a shockwave of energy rippling outward from the Titan's core. The ruins trembled. The air itself seemed to vibrate. The HUDs on their suits flickered, momentarily blinded by a surge of unreadable data, their translators scrambling to make sense of words spoken in no known language. And then, with a sound, like the grinding of mountains, the Titan began to move. It did not rise in a chaotic lurch, nor did it stagger like an awakening beast. It moved with purpose, with precision. Plates of armor shifted seamlessly, and ancient servos groaned as they were forced into motion after untold millennia of silence. And then, impossibly, it knelt. A construct beyond human comprehension, a war machine whose purpose had been lost to time, now knelt before the only beings in the universe it acknowledged as masters. Humanity. The team stood frozen, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. This was not just a discovery, it was a message. It was a declaration. No one knew who had built the Warborn Titan. No one knew why it had been buried beneath Keltier Prime, or what purpose it had once served. But one fact was undeniable. It only bowed to humans, and the galaxy would not let that stand. The revelation spread like wildfire. What had begun as a salvage mission had turned into something far more profound, far more dangerous. Humanity had found something it was never meant to possess. The energy surge that erupted from the Warborn Titan's awakening had not gone unnoticed. Across the Keltier system, sensors flared red, and warning klaxons blared in the command centers of fleets both human and alien. What had once been a forgotten battleground was now the epicenter of a discovery that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. The Unified Defense Corps scrambled to respond. Earth's leaders, already struggling to maintain humanity's fragile place among the dominant species, issued an emergency order: secure the Titan at all costs. Warships, stripped of their usual diplomatic caution, burned through the void, engines howling as they raced toward Keltier Prime. But they weren't the only ones coming. The Zenvari Dominion, a reptilian empire that had ruled the fringes of human space for centuries, moved just as swiftly. The Titan's activation had sent a pulse of ancient code across the stars, a signal in a language that predated even the Dominion itself. To them, this wasn't just an anomaly. It was a challenge, an insult. The Orvac Syndicate, an alliance of pirate kings and mercenary fleets, saw something different: profit. If the Titan was truly a weapon, then it was the ultimate bargaining chip. A single war machine that could bow only to humans. If they controlled it, they controlled humanity itself. And so, as Captain Elias Voss and his team tried to process the enormity of what had just happened, the sky above Keltier Prime darkened with approaching warships. The Titan remained motionless after its initial movement. It knelt as though awaiting orders, its colossal frame still humming with power, but it made no further action. Voss knew, better than to assume it was dormant. No machine this ancient and powerful awoke without a purpose. "Status report," he demanded over the comms. His second-in-command, Lieutenant Rena Calder, had already pulled up scans on her wrist console, her brow furrowed with confusion. "It's not broadcasting anything now," she said. "No distress beacon, no identifiable energy signature. Nothing." Then, why the hell is every major faction converging on us like we just detonated a star? Before she could answer, the radio crackled with an incoming transmission. A voice, thick with the guttural tones of the Zenvari language, echoed through their comms. "This construct belongs to the Dominion," the alien commander declared. "Step away from it, human, and you may yet leave this world alive." Voss exhaled sharply, his mind racing. Surrender was not an option. Humanity had lived under the Dominion's shadow for too long, and now, for the first time, they held something that put fear into the hearts of their oppressors. But could they control it? Before he could respond, the Titan's core pulsed again. This time the vibrations were different, rhythmic, purposeful. Then it moved. The colossal war machine rose from its kneeling position, its movements smooth, deliberate. The dust of Keltier Prime swirled around its feet as it stood at its full height, a being of indomitable presence. And when the Zenvari ships began descending from orbit, weapons charging, the Titan turned its head toward them. For the first time, it acted of its own accord. A single arm lifted. There was no visible weaponry, no cannons or missile pods, just the Titan's immense hand, open-palmed, facing the sky. Then the air shattered. An invisible force ripped through the descending fleet. Ships twisted in midair, their engines sputtering, as unseen gravity wells crushed them like tin cans. Explosions erupted in brilliant bursts across the sky, debris raining down upon the ruins below. The Zenvari fleet, so confident mere moments ago, was reduced to burning wreckage in seconds. Voss barely had time to process what had happened before Calder grabbed his shoulder. "Sir," her voice was hushed, almost reverent. "It's protecting us." The realization sent a chill down his spine. The Titan wasn't just responding to humanity, it was defending them. But why? Who had built it to do this? The Orvac Syndicate's fleet hesitated. Unlike the Dominion, they knew when to pick their battles. Their leader's voice crackled over the comms. "You've made your point, Captain," the pirate admitted. "But that thing belongs to someone, and sooner or later they'll come looking for it." Voss clenched his fists. That was what terrified him most, because the question remained unanswered. If the Warborn Titan only bowed to humans, who had built it? And why had they chosen humanity? The Titan's awakening had sent ripples through the galaxy, and now those ripples threatened to become a tidal wave. Word had spread beyond the immediate factions. Human-controlled space was already on high alert, but the true threat lay in the alliances forming beyond their borders. The Zenvari dominions crushed. Fleet was merely the first of many. Humanity had forced the galaxy to acknowledge them, not as merchants, not as scavengers, but as something far more dangerous. For the first time in history, they had something the universe feared, but fear had never been humanity's ally. On Keltier Prime, Captain Elias Voss stood before the Titan, staring up at the impossible war machine that had chosen them. It still hadn't spoken, if it even could, but it didn't need words. Its actions had spoken volumes. It had protected them. It had destroyed those who sought to take it away. And yet, it had only acted when humans were in direct danger. Voss turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Rena Calder, who was still poring over her console, trying to decipher the ancient inscriptions that lined the Titan's inner chamber. "Tell me you have something," Voss muttered. "I have a theory," she admitted, adjusting the cracked visor of her helmet. "But you're not going to like it. Try me." Calder hesitated, then exhaled sharply. "This thing isn't just a machine, it's waiting for something." Voss frowned. "What do you mean?" "It hasn't fully activated," she explained. "We assumed its kneeling was just some kind of recognition signal, but it's more than that. It's awaiting permission, or an order. It's protecting us because we're human, but that's a passive response. There's something deeper locked inside it, something we haven't accessed yet." Voss felt a chill crawl up his spine. If she was right, then the Titan was only showing them a fraction of its true power. And if that power was unleashed? He didn't have time to finish the thought. An incoming transmission blared across their comms, patched through from orbit. The voice was unfamiliar, clipped, and edged with barely restrained panic. "This is Admiral Tobias Cade of the Earth, Defense Fleet. All ground forces prepare for immediate extraction. Keltir Prime is no longer secure." Voss cursed under his breath. "What now?" Calder pulled up the orbital feed, and Voss's stomach twisted at what he saw. The Zephyri consortium had arrived. Unlike the Zenvari, the Zephyri weren't warriors. They were something worse. Deal-makers. A corporate superpower that thrived on control, on influence, on pulling strings so deeply embedded in galactic politics that no one could cut them loose. They never fought unless they knew they'd already won. And if they had come personally, it meant they were here to collect. Voss's comm crackled again, this time with a voice that sent ice through his veins. Captain Elias Voss, the speaker, drawled, slow and deliberate. "I do hope you realize what you've stumbled into. Zane Valen, a Zephyri executive. Not a general, not a soldier, a man who bought wars instead of fighting them." Voss knew his kind too well. If the Zenvari were brutal and direct, the Zephyri were surgical, dissecting civilizations piece by piece with nothing but a handshake and a contract. Voss didn't reply. Instead, he watched as the Zephyri fleet positioned itself in orbit, sleek white ships forming a blockade that cut off any escape. They weren't here for war. They were here for negotiation. The comms crackled again. "You don't understand what you've found," Valen continued, "but we do, and we're willing to ensure humanity gets its rightful place in the stars, provided you relinquish the Titan to us." Voss clenched his jaw. "Not happening." A soft chuckle. "Captain, you mistake our intent. This is not a demand. This is an opportunity." Voss knew that voice too well. It was the voice of a man who never left a battlefield without getting what he came for. Before he could reply, Calder stiffened. "Sir, something's happening." The Titan's core pulsed again. Not the gentle hum from before. This was different. The inscriptions across its armored surface shifted, the lines glowing with a deep, otherworldly blue, symbols rearranging, in real time, forming something new. It was responding. To them. The comms erupted in chaos as Zephyri ships suddenly lost control, their engines stuttering, their communications jammed. One by one, their sleek corporate ships began shutting down in perfect unison. Then, in a single fluid movement, the Titan turned its head to the sky. A new message pulsed through every ship, every console, every piece of technology that had once been silent. One sentence burned into every screen. "You are not worthy." The Zephyri ships fell still. The blockade was no longer a threat. And for the first time in his life, Voss saw something he had never expected to see from a Zephyri executive. Fear. Valen's voice crackled back over the comms, sharp and unsteady. "Captain, you don't understand what you're dealing with." Voss exhaled, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He didn't understand. Not fully. But he knew one thing. The Titan had judged them, and only humanity had been found worthy. The real question now was, worthy of what? Silence gripped the battlefield. The SCIFI fleet hung motionless in orbit, their once gleaming ships, reduced to lifeless husks in the wake of the Titan's judgment. The words still blazed across their screens, "You are not worthy," a message that defied translation, yet burned with unmistakable finality. Captain Elias Voss could feel it. Something had changed. The Titan was awake, not just reacting, not just defending. It had made a choice, and that choice had consequences. Lieutenant Calder's voice was barely above a whisper. "Sir, it's doing something." The Titan's colossal form shifted, its armor humming with energy. The glyphs along its surface began to rearrange, pulsing in patterns too complex to follow. What had once been an unreadable script now moved with purpose, as if unlocking some ancient directive. Then the ground trembled. A deep, resonant tone erupted from within the Titan's core, shaking the very fabric of reality. Dust and debris lifted from the surface of Keltier Prime, suspended in midair as if gravity itself had been rewritten. The air thickened, electric with something beyond science, beyond understanding. Calder's fingers flew across her console. "I don't know what it's doing, but I think we just crossed the point of no return." Voss didn't need to be told, he could feel it. The Titan's head turned skyward, toward the broken remnants of the Sanvari fleet, toward the silent SCIFI blockade, toward something far beyond the limits of their comprehension. And then it spoke, not in words, not in sound, in understanding. The I. Message didn't come through the comms. It didn't come in a language, it simply was, planted in their minds like a thought that had always been there, waiting to be remembered. A single truth, ancient and undeniable. I was never meant to be found. A shockwave of raw force burst outward from the Titan, sending tremors across the planet's surface. The ruins of Keltier shuddered and split, revealing structures buried beneath the bedrock, impossible machinery awakening after untold millennia of silence. This world, Keltier Prime, was never a graveyard. It was a vault that had just been breached. The Titan's form shifted, its armor plating reconfiguring, adapting as more and more of its ancient systems came online. This was not its final form. It was evolving. The realization struck Voss with terrifying clarity. This was not a weapon of war. It was something more, something greater, and they had unleashed it. Above them, the SCIFI forces scrambled. The executive, Zane Valen, had lost his composure. His voice crackled through the comms, no longer the measured tone of a corporate overlord, but one of genuine fear. "Voss, listen to me," he snapped. "You don't understand what you've done." Voss didn't answer. He was too busy watching the sky tear open. A rift, a wound in reality itself, began to form above Keltier Prime. Not a wormhole, not a standard FTL distortion. Something older, something raw. Through it, glimpses of something vast could be seen, something watching. And then, for the first time in his life, Voss saw fear in the Titan itself. It was afraid. The realization sent ice through his veins. If something this powerful, this ancient, was afraid, then what the hell was coming? The Titan moved, its form shifting with impossible speed. Where before it had knelt in recognition, where before it had stood in judgment, now it prepared for war. Calder's voice was tight. "Sir, I don't think this thing was ever meant to fight in our wars. No, it wasn't. It was built for something bigger." The rift widened, and through it a shadow loomed. Something vast, something unknowable. The Titan's voice returned. "Urgent, absolute, I must go." Voss felt his breath catch. "Go where?" "To finish what was started." Energy surged through the Titan's core, its body beginning to dissolve into light. A process beyond human comprehension. Not teleportation, not destruction, but ascension. It was leaving. And then, for the first time since it had awoken, it turned its gaze directly to Voss. And he understood. The Titan had not been built for war. It had been built for guardianship, but not of humanity alone, of everything. And whatever had been locked away beyond that rift, whatever it had been built to stop, was waking up. As the last of its form faded into energy, a final message burned itself into their minds, into their ships, into the very fabric of space. Be ready. Then the Titan was gone, and the war for the galaxy had just begun. The Titan was gone. For the first time since its awakening, true silence fell over Keltier Prime. The ruins no longer trembled with unseen power. The sky no longer crackled with cosmic energies, and the battlefield, once filled with the sounds of war, felt hollow. The Titan had ascended beyond their reach, beyond their understanding, and it had left them with a warning. Captain Elias Voss stood at the edge of the excavation, sight staring into the empty space where the Titan had once knelt. The after-image of its departure still burned in his mind, a parting message echoing like a ghost in his thoughts. Be ready. For what? He exhaled sharply, his chest heavy. Humanity had uncovered something ancient, something beyond them, and, for all their arrogance, for all their resilience, they still had no idea what they had set in motion. Lieutenant Rena Calder was the first to speak. Sir, it's really gone. It wasn't a question. They both knew the truth. The Titan had left because it had no choice, and that terrified Voss more than anything else. The Zephyri fleet remained eerily silent, their once powerful ships now little more than lifeless husks in the wake of the Titan's judgment. Whatever had shut them down, whatever force had deemed them unworthy, still lingered. Their leader, Zane Valen, hadn't spoken since the event. No threats, no demands. For the first time, the most powerful corporate entity in the galaxy had no leverage. They had lost. Voss turned toward the comms officer. Status on the Zenvari remnants? A pause, then, They're retreating, sir. What's left of them anyway? Voss let out a slow breath. They were running. The Zenvari Dominion. The most war-hardened empire in the sector. Running, because they had seen something that terrified them, because they knew what humanity did not. Calder's fingers flew across her console, scanning the atmospheric readings, searching for any residual data left behind by the Titan's departure. She bit her lip, her usual confidence replaced by something close to fear. I don't get it, she murmured. It was built for war, but it wasn't a weapon. It wasn't meant to fight like we do. Voss nodded. No, it wasn't. Because the war it was meant to fight hadn't begun yet. The Keltier ruins still hummed with dormant energy, remnants of an infrastructure they couldn't begin to understand. The surface-level structures were only the beginning. How deep did this place go? How much was still buried? How much of the Titan's purpose was still unknown? Voss clenched his fists. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. A notification flashed across Calder's screen, drawing her attention. She frowned, tilting her head. That's impossible. Voss turned to her. What? She looked up, eyes wide. We just got a transmission from an unidentified source. From where? She hesitated. Not from anywhere. She swallowed. It's coming from deep space. Voss felt his blood run cold. Put it through. The comms flared to life. At first there was only static. Then something deep, something vast, something that had no right to sound as ancient as it did, spoke two words. We know. Then the transmission cut out. Voss and Calder exchanged a glance. Neither of them spoke. Because there was nothing to say. Humanity was no longer alone in the dark. Something else had heard the Titan's call, and now it was coming. The message echoed in the silence. We know. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a warning. It was acknowledgement. Somewhere, out in the abyss, something had been listening. Captain Elias Voss felt a weight settle in his chest. The Titan had vanished into the unknown, taking with its secrets beyond comprehension. But it hadn't erased its presence. It had left breadcrumbs, and now something had found them. Keltier Prime was quiet, but Voss knew better than to mistake that for peace. The ruins beneath their feet still pulsed with dormant energy, and the wreckage of warships littered the sky like gravestones. They had survived, but for how long? Lieutenant Calder broke the silence. "Sir." She hesitated, scanning the comms data again. "That transmission, whoever sent it, they're not using any known technology." "Alien?" Voss asked. She shook her head. "Not Zenvari, not Zephyri, not anyone we've encountered before." A chill ran through him. If it wasn't the empires they knew, then who, or what, was out there? Then the second transmission came. No voice this time. Just coordinates. Deep space. Beyond charted systems. A place no human ship had ever traveled. Voss stared at the numbers. He didn't need to say it. They all knew what this meant. The Titan hadn't just left. It had gone somewhere. And now, someone, or something, wanted them to follow. The weight in his chest deepened. Humanity had spent centuries clawing for a place among the stars, proving they weren't weak, that they weren't insignificant. Now, for the first time, they had been noticed. And the real question wasn't who was waiting for them out there. It was whether they'd be ready. Voss exhaled, eyes locked on the void beyond Keltier. There was no turning back now.